powered by Riverside FM.
Hats off to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for a good 2025 draft. Great job for Kwesi. And so, man, listen, I've been getting some pushback about being a little bit too positive about the Minnesota Vikings and their draft. And what I want to do today is walk you through what Kwesi and KOC and the boys have done since they've been here, man. It has just been a fantastic job. And I think when you step away and get out of your feelings a little bit and wanting everything done perfectly, I think you would realize that Kwesi has done a great job. And it's amazing to me that he has not gotten a contract extension yet. And I know people keep saying it's coming, it's coming. I believe it's coming as well. But I'm just surprised that it's taken as long, man. When you talk about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and KOC, what was the term that they used when they came in? I remember the press conference like it was just yesterday. They used the term competitive rebuild. And at the time, we had an idea of what that meant, but we really didn't have an idea of what that meant or if Kwesi and KOC could even pull that stuff off, man. You know, sometimes you get in front of these GMs, you know, the coaches, the owners, and they just throw you a line of bullshit out there. They just throw you a line of bull out there just to appease the fans and the media, using all these terminologies. Remember the GM for the Bears? We're gonna take power in the North and never give it back. Have they done that yet? See, this is what I'm talking about in terms of the appreciation of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I mean, look around the league. The NFL 2025 draft gives you an insight into other organizations' front offices. Like, the whole story over the draft was Shedeur Sanders, and you got an opportunity to look inside the Cleveland Browns organization, who eventually end up drafting Shedeur, man. And I just wouldn't want to be those fans. The New York Jets, like all of these organizations that have just been terrible, we are very fortunate to have the Minnesota Vikings. And the brass that we have in Minnesota being competent. Do they do everything perfectly? Absolutely not. But they are competent, and you can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Think about 2021. Our roster was aging. We had Mike Zimmer as our head coach. There was nothing but toxic environment in that place. Just toxic. You had the head coach, wasn't even talking to the quarterback, which was Kirk Cousins at the time. You had Rick Spielman and Zimmer. You got the head coach and the general manager wasn't even speaking. And Spielman was making moves just to spite Mike Zimmer. Remember those years? Just toxic. The Minnesota Vikings franchise, it was bad. It was toxic. And the play on the field reflected all of that. The aging roster and paying Kirk Cousins way more than what we should have been paying him. First guaranteed contract in the history of the NFL, Kirk Cousins was supposed to get us over the hump. Don't forget those times, because it should make you more appreciative and more in line with what our fellas are doing today with the Minnesota Vikings. Like, I wouldn't want to go back there for any amount of money in the world, 2021 season, with Mike Zimmer and those guys. I wouldn't want to. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back and be a fan under that regime. I mean, it was terrible. Then in 2022, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell arrived with the plan. And they labeled the plan a competitive rebuild. They could have, most organizations would have came in, cleaned house, fire sold their roster, just stripped everything down to be bare bones. That could have been our squad. The Wilfs didn't want that, thank God. Kwesi didn't want that. KOC, the new coach, sure as hell didn't want that. I mean, when you're a new coach, you want to win. It's remarkable how organizations put these coaches into bad situations and then give them like 3 years to kind of get out of it. And then if they don't, they end up firing them when the team wasn't crap to begin with. You see this all the time in various sports, but it's really prevalent around the NFL. I mean, look at the New England Patriots situation last year with their coach. They gave that guy nothing. Post Bill Belichick, nothing. And they end up firing him after a year. But we had the competitive rebuild with the Minnesota Vikings. It was a promise to win while building for the future. Now sit back and think about that. Promising to win while building for the future. That's pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate. If you were a person that didn't know anything about the Minnesota Vikings and you were looking at our team from afar, you would have no idea that we were in a rebuilding process. You would have no idea. When you're comparing our franchises to franchises like the Jacksonville Jaguars, post Urban Meyer, or the Jets or the Cleveland Browns, like you could tell that those franchises are in rebuild mode. And the Vikings are in rebuild mode as well, but they are under the umbrella of what Kwesi, the genius of Kwesi, deemed a competitive rebuild. Not a tank, a competitive rebuild. The first thing Kwesi Adofo did 2022, 2023 was hire Kevin O'Connell, a fresh, young, stud, offensive-minded head coach. Usually in these organizations, you go completely opposite from the coach that you had previously. So I'm calling it right now. I guarantee you, the next head coach of the Vikings, whenever that occurs, Kevin O'Connell can't coach forever. The guy will probably be the exact opposite of Kevin O'Connell. That's the way this stuff usually goes. Zimmer was a hard-ass defensive guy. The Minnesota Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah went off of Kevin O'Connell. Fresh offensive mind, young guy. Just came off of being offensive coordinator with the Rams, won a Super Bowl. Think about that move. Everybody criticizes the draft picks from Kwesi, but just think about that move. Just think if he would have chosen anybody else besides KOC. You can make an argument, although we have not won a Super Bowl yet with KOC, but we will, that was a home run hire, man. That hire reshaped and rebuilt the culture of this franchise for years. It calmed everything down. The building, the culture is a lot better. There's no toxic environment in Eagan right now at Vikings headquarters. The players can feel it. The reputation of the Vikings are making this organization a place of destination. Players want to come here. The reputation of our program, the Minnesota Vikings, our organization, is second to none right now in the league in terms of culture. 2022 draft, there has been a lot of criticism about that draft, and quite frankly, I feel like there should be some criticism. This is not giving Kwesi Adofo-Mensah a pass, man. He drafted Lewis Cine, bust. Andrew Booth Jr., bust. Ed Ingram, bust. So he deserves some critiques for that. Keep in mind, though, Kwesi's not a football guy. He's a Wall Street guy. He's a business guy. First NFL draft that he ever probably was in charge of. And I'm not using that as an excuse, But I do feel like since then, it's been getting better and better and better. He restructured roster moves. He extended Kirk Cousins, not to a long-term deal, but to a short-term deal in the event that after the fact, if they needed to make a move or get out from under that deal, they could. Can you imagine if Spielman was still in charge and he was faced? Kirk Cousins would probably still be here under a long-term deal. And we would just be strapped with salary cap dollars, 25% of it going to Kirk Cousins, and we couldn't fill out our team the way we've done under Kwesi and his regime. Think about that. They moved on from veterans like Anthony Barr and Michael Pierce, guys that were emotionally attached to the fan base here. Sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. They brought in guys like Zadarius Smith to help increase the pass rush, and veterans like Jordan Hicks. These are the early key moves that were part of that competitive rebuild that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah put into place. May seem small, may not seem like a big deal, UP Nation, but these deals were valid, strategic, smart. This is why I don't understand the venom towards Kwesi, man. These are fantastic moves. By the way, hit that like and subscribe button if you like the content. Now, let's talk about the bold decisions, man. The bold decisions that when you're at a fork in the road, you're like, man, do I make this decision or do I not? The bold decisions that Kwesi made in 2023-24. They either cut or moved on from these players. Guys like Adam Thielen, man. Adam Thielen was a baller for the Minnesota Vikings. Not only was he a baller, but he was ingrained in the community. People loved Adam Thielen. I still love Adam Thielen. I hate watching the Carolina Panthers today because I hate seeing Adam Thielen in that uniform. I would have loved for Adam Thielen to finish his career as a Minnesota Vikings. You think the majority of Viking fans would not have liked to see Adam Thielen still in purple? Of course. Of course they would love to see Adam Thielen still. There would be some people that would reach out right now and say, hey, we got to find a way to get Adam Thielen back in the fold. That's how much people loved Adam Thielen, but we had to move on. Adam Thielen wanted more money, and he wanted a bigger role in the offense. And so he had to find that spot that was good for him. These were moves that the Minnesota Vikings had to make. Eric Kendricks, who was a stalwart linebacker in the middle for the Minnesota Vikings, UP Nation. Kendricks was a baller. Like these guys that I'm talking about, Adam Thielen and Kendricks, these guys aren't scrubs. These guys were, you could argue, maybe a little bit past their prime, but still was balling. We had to move on from Eric Kendricks. That proved to be a pretty good move for the Minnesota Vikings. Kendricks has bounced around to the Chargers, to the Dallas Cowboys, all of these teams. Kwesi moved off of these guys at the right time. Dalvin Cook, you remember the years that Dalvin Cook gave us as Minnesota Viking fans, hand the ball off, hit the A-gap home run. Dalvin Cook. At the time, we didn't have another real running back in the fold. But we had to make a decision on whether Dalvin Cook was worth the contract that he was demanding. And could we move forward without Dalvin Cook and still be competitive? Tough decisions, man. Tough decisions. And then you look at the 2023 draft. After the fact, we cut and moved on from those players. You bring in a guy like Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison has had his share of off-the-field issues, but you can't deny that Jordan Addison is a baller. You can't deny that he is a fantastic number 2 for the Minnesota Vikings. You can't deny that that was a home run pick. At the time, I didn't understand it. We had Justin Jefferson Why do we need to draft a wide receiver at that moment? But KOC got a voice in that room, convinced Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to draft him, and it's worked out. And again, I know he's had some off-the-field issues, but hopefully that's going to mature, and he's a great 1-2 combination with Justin Jefferson. It remains to be seen if Jordan Addison is a legit number one wide receiver. He's definitely not the caliber of Justin Jefferson, but man, he's a great number two, UP Nation. He's a fantastic number two. You bring in a guy like Mekhi Blackmon as well, who I think Mekhi Blackmon is going to be a really good cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings. Coming off an ACL, that's always risky. You just don't know how those injuries are going to present themselves going into the future for that specific player. But I think if Mekhi Blackmon's knee comes back right, Mekhi Blackmon is going to be one of those corners that he may not be, one of the elite shutdown corners in the league, but the guy is going to be solid. I just like everything about him, and I think he's going to do well for the Minnesota Vikings. If there was anybody, man, for the Vikings that I really wanted to see this year play, I'm going to be keeping my eye on Mekhi Blackmon because I think the kid is going to be absolutely fantastic for the Vikings. And then the Minnesota Vikings had to make a decision and draft a guy like Jaren Hall. And you could see the talent in college. I don't know if necessarily they looked at him as the guy that would take over from Kirk Cousins, but I thought it was okay to take a flyer on him. During the middle of the season, you got the trade acquisition of TJ Hawkinson. Mid-2022 season, they brought him in. And at the time, it was a great move. And I still think it was a great move for the Minnesota Vikings. You start adding those type of pieces together. At the time, TJ Hawkinson, top one, top two, top three tight end in the league, depending on who you like, depending on who you're comparing him to, definitely was top three. You bring him in and add him to the weapons of Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. These are great competitive rebuilding moves. And these are moves that, really depleted us in terms of our draft assets. But it's moves that have really set us up for where we are now. They bring in key free agents during the 2023-24 season. Byron Murphy Jr., Marcus Davenport, Josh Oliver. Byron Murphy Jr., you just gave the bag to. And I know a lot of people said, we overpaid for Byron Murphy Jr. When you look at the market of cornerbacks this offseason, I didn't think we overpaid. The market is what the market is. If you don't bring back Byron Murphy Jr., what do? I know we heard a lot about the trade for Sauce Gardner, but to get a player like him, the Jets were going to get a haul for that. So are you depleting your draft assets even more? But we bring in Byron Murphy Jr., we bring in Marcus Davenport, in my opinion, that dude don't want to play football. He's just going from team to team collecting checks. And I am just amazed that teams keep re-signing this guy. He must be such a talent when he is healthy that people just keep gambling with him. You might as well go ahead and put $500 in a slot machine and pull. Because that's basically what you're doing when you're signing Marcus Davenport, who is now with the Lions. And I believe he re-upped with the Lions after not playing at all last year. Then you got Josh Oliver from the Ravens, man. Here's a guy who is one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. And if you watched him last year, he's becoming a better pass catcher, UP Nation. He's becoming a better pass catcher. So this is just 2024 season. I mean, key acquisitions, key decision-making processes that get rid of guys who the fans may really love, but it was a necessity to get rid of some of these guys like Adam Thielen, man, Eric Kendricks. These are the decisions that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has made. That competitive rebuild. He drafted and chose to bet on younger players. Younger players like Bynum, Evans, Asamoah. Like, he wanted to inject some youth into the Minnesota Vikings defense. And I think we were getting pretty long in the tooth. And I look at those decisions to keep some of those guys around, and you can say, well, these guys aren't necessarily elite guys. Man, but sometimes you don't always have to hit home runs with every single personnel decision that you make. It would be nice. Just like in baseball, every time you step up to the plate, it would be nice to hit a home run, but sometimes you got to bunt. Sometimes you got to play small ball. Sometimes you got to steal some bases. Sometimes you got to hit some singles, some doubles, some triples. You can't always hit home runs. And I think that's a great analogy because this is what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and KOC and the fellas have been doing. Now, the biggest move that I think that this regime has ever made is drafting J.J. McCarthy, the highest drafted quarterback in Minnesota Vikings history. Next on the list will be Daunte Culpepper. And Daunte Culpepper has come out lately and just spoken volumes about meeting J.J. McCarthy and what an incredible person he is, and he thinks he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Now, I don't know how much stock you put in Daunte Culpepper to be able to evaluate that. He definitely has the ability to evaluate J.J. McCarthy's character. In terms of his quarterback play, who knows? But J.J. McCarthy impressed. He impressed Daunte Culpepper. Now they've drafted 2025. Fast forward to Donovan Jackson. And I've been hearing a lot of kickback on whether or not we should have drafted Donovan Jackson. And let me tell you, being an Ohio State guy, being an Ohio State fan, we got one hell of a player. And I know he's probably ranked third on a lot of people's draft boards, but again, just because he was ranked third doesn't necessarily mean he is the third best left guard in the draft. The draft is a weird place, man. It's a weird place, and I think the Minnesota Vikings got a steal. But more importantly, with the whole J.J. McCarthy thing, they've got their future franchise quarterback who right now is doing everything right. The only setback the kid has had is his knee, a meniscus. And he did the full repair job on his meniscus so this doesn't keep reoccurring. Man, free agency wasn't about flash for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I mean, his free agency has been absolutely fantastic, UP Nation. And it's not all about flash. It's about fit, future, and flexibility for the Minnesota Vikings. 2024 free agency class, Aaron Jones, Blake Cashman, Jonathan Grenard, Shaq Griffin, Sam Darnold in the conversation for MVP, Gink, re-signing Dalton Reisner at the guard spot. See, we are lucky, man, and we don't appreciate our brass all the time. But I'm just telling you, whenever you start to feel some way about the Minnesota Vikings and their decisions, man, go look at some of the teams and compare their front offices and their GMs and their head coaches to ours. Man, we are in such a good place. It's why I will stand on the mountain and won't move that the Minnesota Vikings are going to be in the Super Bowl conversation within the next 3 years. They are going to have their shot at winning a championship in the next 3 years. The 2025 free agency class, they added depth. They added role players. at the cornerback spot and the offensive line spot, everybody was banging on the table, improve the trenches. Kwesi and the fellas improved the trenches. Absolutely fantastic. They focus on a young core. And they didn't, in my opinion, they didn't headline chase. Go back to months before free agency started and some of the names that were thrown out there, DJ Reed, fellas, and you could go to a lot of different publications where people were saying this guy is going to be a great fit for the Minnesota Vikings. That guy is going to be a great fit. These big names. And I think there were some that were a little really disappointed that we didn't get some of those big names, but we got the names that we needed. We solidified our offensive line in bringing in Donovan Jackson in the draft. Now the only question that was left, because we got all of these things in place, was who our QB2 was going to be. We just acquired Sam Howell. He's young, but he's got a lot of cost control in terms of competition. You're not breaking the bank for him. And now you've got a core that's ready to compete. The Minnesota Vikings are essentially younger, faster, cheaper. Kwesi didn't tank. He rebuilt this thing the right way. UP Nation. The Vikings are entering the 2025 season not as underdogs, but as a real threat in the NFC. A real threat in the NFC. Just being 3 years removed from Zimmer. And you can throw that second year, that sandwich in between year one and year three, with Kirk Cousins popping his Achilles. In the last half of that season, the Minnesota Vikings still had an opportunity to sneak into the playoffs. Came up a little bit short, but sneakily sneak into the playoffs. So when you start to criticize Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, saying that he doesn't, not saying that he's above criticism because he's not perfect. And we are allowed to critique moves that we don't agree with. I just don't understand the venom about Kwesi should be fired. When you look at all the moves that we've gone through and where the organization was before Kwesi stepped in the door, I think we are in good shape. And I think if you have anybody else in that position that doesn't have the philosophy of a competitive rebuild, I think this team could look completely different. So when you talk about the Minnesota Vikings, and what they've done through this competitive rebuild, man, I think is absolutely amazing. They haven't made perfect moves, but 95% of their moves have gotten us to the point where we are in the conversation of being one of the best teams in the NFC. Along the way, having some pretty memorable seasons. The competitive rebuild, man. I just love what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the fellas have done with this organization and this franchise. And so maybe I am a little bit more positive than I should be. But I look at even the 2025 draft. I don't know what people wanted the Minnesota Vikings to do, but even with only four picks, and there's a lot of evaluation to be done. You can argue with just 4 picks that the Minnesota Vikings had. They did a pretty good job. Now, it remains to be seen how much of an impact these players are going to be. But I think when it's all said and done, the one thing that I think we're all going to probably have a good space to agree on is this. We could have done worse with those 4 picks. I think that's safe to say now today. The Minnesota Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, KOC, man, we're just very fortunate to have these guys in the fold. I can't wait to see what the next 3 years are going to look like under these guys and J.J. McCarthy. Lock up Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, man. Give him his contract extension, and let's go. Let's go, man. This has been Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah deserves a lot of credit for this competitive rebuild. Man, I can't wait to see what's next. And as always, UP Nation, we will make sure to see ya when we see ya. SKOL!